Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to be completely unshaken by the world around you? To stand calm in the face of insults, betrayals, and frustrations, as if they were nothing more than passing winds against a mountain? In our daily lives, we often let the words and actions of others control us, sparking anger and frustration. But what if there was another way? A way to master your mind rather than letting your emotions master you. This is the story of a Zen master whose tranquility was so profound that nothing could disturb him. His secret was not in avoiding conflict, nor in suppressing his emotions, but in understanding the true nature of anger and choosing not to let it control him. Today we embark on a journey through his wisdom, a path that may just change the way you see yourself and the world forever. There was once a Zen master whose composure was legendary. No matter the situation, whether faced with admiration or hostility, his expression remained serene. To his students, this unwavering tranquility seemed almost supernatural. While they wrestled with frustration and irritation, their master stood as an unshakable force, immune to provocation. One day, a young disciple, troubled by his own frequent bouts of anger, approached the master with a burning question. "Master, how is it that you never get angry? How can you remain so untouched by the words and actions of others?" The master smiled, his eyes reflecting a deep, timeless wisdom. "Tomorrow I will teach you," he replied. "But first, tell me, do you truly seek to master your emotions, or are you merely curious?" The student hesitated. I want to master them, Master. But isn't anger natural? Don't we all feel it?" The master nodded. "Yes, anger is natural, but allowing it to control you is a choice. Come tomorrow, and I will show you another way." That night, the student lay awake, anticipation keeping him restless. Was there a secret method, a hidden mantra that could erase anger? The next morning he arrived early, his curiosity overflowing. The master greeted him with his usual calm and handed him a simple clay bowl filled to the brim with water. "Hold this carefully," he instructed. The student obeyed, gripping the bowl with steady hands. Without warning, the master struck the water's surface with a wooden stick. The student flinched as water splashed over the rim and onto his hands. "Why did the water spill?" the master asked. "Because you struck it," the student answered, slightly puzzled. The master shook his head. "No, my young friend. The water spilled because the bowl was full. Had it been empty, nothing would have spilled." The student furrowed his brow, trying to grasp the lesson. The master continued, "Our minds are like this bowl. When they are filled with pride, ego, and insecurity, even the slightest disturbance causes an overflow of emotions. But if we empty ourselves of attachment, no matter how hard life strikes us, we remain undisturbed. Do you see?" The student nodded slowly, but doubt lingered in his eyes. "But Master, how do I empty my mind? It seems impossible to simply let go." The master chuckled softly. "Come, let us walk." They strolled through the monastery gardens, the morning air fragrant with blooming jasmine. The master gestured to a tall, swaying tree. "See how the tree bends with the wind? It does not resist, it does not fight. It allows the wind to pass through, yet it remains rooted and strong. This is how you must be." The student pondered this. "So, I should not resist my emotions?" "You should neither resist nor indulge them. Simply observe them. When anger rises, do not clutch it tightly. Let it pass, like a drifting cloud in the vast sky." The student exhaled deeply. "But what if someone insults me? What if their words truly wound me?" The master smiled knowingly. "Tomorrow I will show you another lesson. Reflect on today's wisdom." That night, the student lay awake again, replaying the master's words. He had spent his life reacting impulsively, never pausing to understand his own mind. Could it be possible to simply witness emotions without being swept away by them? A resolve settled within him. He would find out. The next morning, the master handed the student a bowl filled to the brim with water. "Hold this carefully," he instructed. The student watched closely as the master took a wooden stick and lightly tapped the surface. The water trembled, then spilled over the edge, dripping onto the ground. Why did the water spill? the master asked. Because you struck it, the student replied. The master shook his head with a knowing smile. No, the water spilled because the bowl was full. Had it been empty, nothing would have spilled. The student frowned, considering the words. The master continued, when your mind is filled with pride, insecurity, or anger, even the smallest disturbance causes an overflow of emotion. But if your mind is empty, if you hold no attachments, then nothing can unsettle you. The student's gaze remained fixed on the bowl. But master, how do I empty my mind? How do I stop myself from reacting? The master gently poured the remaining water onto the earth. You do not force it out. You simply allow. When anger rises, do not fight it, do not resist it. Observe it, then let it pass, just as this water flows away without clinging to the bowl. The student watched the last droplets seep into the ground, realization dawning upon him. So, when anger comes, I should not suppress it or act on it, but simply let it pass through me? The master nodded. Yes, acknowledge its presence, but do not give it control. The moment you stop grasping at it, it ceases to own you. Over the following days, the student practiced this lesson. Each time frustration arose, he reminded himself, be the empty bowl. Slowly, he noticed a transformation. Insults that once pierced his heart now passed over him like autumn leaves in the wind. One evening, as he sat in meditation, the master approached him. Do you feel different? He asked. The student smiled. Yes, master. I feel lighter. The master placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. That is the weight of anger lifting. Mastery is not the absence of emotions, but the freedom from their control. True peace lies in letting go. For the first time, the student truly understood. He bowed deeply, a sense of liberation settling within him. That evening, the master led the student to a quiet spot by a pond, the stillness of the water mirroring the calm he wished to impart. Tell me, the master asked, what is anger? The student thought for a moment before responding. It is a strong emotion, a reaction to something we don't like. The master nodded thoughtfully. And where does it come from? Does it descend from the sky? Does it rise from the earth? The student hesitated. It comes from inside us. Precisely, the master said, picking up a small stone and tossing it into the pond. The water rippled outward in expanding circles. Imagine someone insults you. Where does the disturbance occur? In their mouth or in your mind? In my mind, the student admitted. Then the problem is not their words, but your reaction to them. The student watched the ripples spread across the water, lost in contemplation. The master allowed the silence to stretch before he continued. Now consider this. He reached down and scooped a handful of water, letting it trickle through his fingers. If I were to take poison and offer it to you, but you refused to drink it, would it still harm you? The student shook his head. No, master. Then why do you so willingly accept the poison of others' words? Why do you allow yourself to be consumed by something that is not yours to carry? The student's breath caught in his throat. He had never thought of it that way before. The master smiled knowingly and continued. Anger is like a fire that you yourself ignite. Every time you react to an insult, you are tossing wood onto that fire. But if you refuse to add fuel, the flames will die down on their own. The student furrowed his brow. But master, sometimes anger feels automatic. It rises before I even have a chance to think. How can I stop it? The master nodded. Ah, that is the true practice. You must learn to recognize the spark before it turns into a blaze. Awareness is your greatest tool. When you feel anger rising, do not act on it immediately. Pause, breathe, observe it without attachment, and it will pass. The student exhaled deeply, absorbing the wisdom. But master, isn't anger sometimes justified? If someone harms me or another, shouldn't I feel anger? The master regarded him with a gentle gaze. There is a difference between feeling anger and being controlled by it. Righteous anger, when used with wisdom, can inspire action and justice. But blind anger, uncontrolled, is like holding a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first. The student inhaled sharply. He had heard similar sayings before, but now, standing by the pond with the cool night air around him, he felt the truth of it deep within. The master bent down and picked up another stone. "Observe this." He dropped the rock into the water, watching as it sank immediately to the bottom. A heavy mind, weighed down by resentment and ego, sinks easily under the weight of its own emotions. Now watch this. He reached into his robe and pulled out a dry leaf, placing it on the water's surface. It floated effortlessly, drifting along with the gentle current. A mind that clings to anger and hurt will always sink, drowning in its own burdens. But a mind that lets go, that does not attach itself to suffering, remains free, floating above life's disturbances. If you wish to find peace, you must become like the leaf. The student watched as the leaf danced across the water's surface, never sinking, never resisting. He exhaled slowly, realization dawning upon him. So, I must release my attachment to being right, to proving myself, to defending my pride. Yes, the master said softly, and in doing so, you will discover true strength. The student remained still for a long time, feeling the weight of the lesson settle into his heart. He gazed at the stars, understanding for the first time that, for years, he had not been living. He had been reacting. He had allowed others to dictate his emotions, simply by permitting their words and actions to enter his mind. "Thank you, Master," he finally whispered. "I see now. Anger is not something that happens to me. It is something I allow." The master placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "And now that you know, you are free to choose differently." As they walked back toward the temple, the student felt lighter. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, he felt capable of mastering his own mind. The next morning, the master gave the student a simple task. "Go to the marketplace," he instructed, "and if anyone insults you, return and tell me." Eager to understand the lesson, the student did as he was told. As he wandered through the bustling streets, a merchant sneered at him, saying, "You fool! You walk like an idiot." At first, the student felt a flicker of anger stir within him. His pride urged him to respond, but then he remembered the master's words. He took a deep breath, let the insult pass, and walked on without reacting. When he returned to the temple, the master asked, "Did anyone insult you?" "Yes," the student replied. "A man called me a fool." The master chuckled. "Tell me, did his words enter your mind, or did you leave them with him?" The student paused, considering his response. "At first I took them in, but then I let them go." The master nodded approvingly. "Good. Words are like gifts. If someone hands you a rotten fruit and you refuse to take it, who still has it?" "The one who offered it," the student answered. "Exactly," the master said. "If you do not accept an insult, it remains with the one who delivered it, not with you." The student furrowed his brow. "But master, sometimes words hurt. Even if I try not to take them, they linger in my mind. How do I truly let go?" The master reached into his robe and pulled out a small mirror. Holding it up, he asked, "If someone stands in front of this mirror and makes a terrible face, does the mirror become ugly?" The student shook his head. "No, master. The mirror only reflects." The master smiled. "Exactly. The mirror does not argue. It does not take offense. It simply reflects what is before it and remains unchanged. If you wish to be free of anger, you must become like this mirror. Reflect what comes your way, but do not hold on to it." The student took a deep breath, absorbing the wisdom. The master then pointed to the sky. "Look at that passing cloud. It moves freely, carried by the wind. It does not cling to one place, nor does it fight against the wind's direction. When someone insults you, let their words pass through you, like the wind through the trees. If you do not grasp them, they cannot stay." The student smiled. "So I must become like the mirror in the cloud, reflecting but not absorbing, allowing things to pass without clinging to them." "Now you understand," the master said. Over the following weeks, the student practiced this wisdom. Each time someone insulted him, he envisioned himself as the mirror, reflecting but not absorbing. He saw words as clouds drifting past, unable to shake the vast sky of his mind. One evening, he returned to the master with newfound clarity. "Master, today I was insulted, but I felt nothing. I did not resist, I did not engage. I simply let it pass. And for the first time, I felt truly free. The master's eyes shone with approval. That is the power of letting go. When you no longer take ownership of negativity, you are no longer a prisoner of the emotions of others. The student bowed deeply, gratitude filling his heart. He had discovered a simple but profound truth. Freedom is not about changing the world. It is about changing how we respond to it. That evening, the master led the student to a roaring bonfire, its flames licking the night sky. The wood crackled, sending embers floating into the darkness. "Throw more wood into the fire," the master instructed. The student obeyed, picking up a log and tossing it in. The flames surged, burning hotter and fiercer. "Now stop feeding it," the master said. The student stepped back, watching as the fire, deprived of fuel, began to weaken. The once raging flames flickered, then slowly diminished into glowing embers. "This is anger," the master explained. "When someone provokes you, they are handing you wood. If you grasp it and throw it into the fire, your anger grows. But if you refuse, the fire cannot sustain itself. It will burn out on its own." The student gazed at the dying fire, a realization settling in. He had spent his life unknowingly feeding his own flames, allowing the words and actions of others to dictate his inner state. "Master," he said hesitantly, "how do I stop myself from grabbing the wood? Sometimes anger flares before I can even think." The master smiled. "It begins with awareness. When you feel the heat rising inside, pause. Do not act. Do not speak. Just breathe. See the fire within you, but do not feed it." The student nodded. "But what if someone keeps throwing wood at me? What if they refuse to stop provoking me?" The master bent down and retrieved a single burning coal with a pair of tongs. He held it before the student. "Hold out your hand." The student hesitated. "Master, it will burn me." "Exactly," the master said, tossing the coal back into the fire. "If you refuse to pick it up, it cannot harm you. People may throw words at you, but you decide whether to hold on to them or let them fall away." The student stood in silence, absorbing the wisdom. For the first time, he saw anger for what it truly was, not something inflicted upon him, but something he had the power to allow or deny. That night, as he sat in quiet reflection, he thought of the fire, the wood, and the burning coal. He resolved that he would no longer be a willing participant in his own suffering. And for the first time, he felt the weight of anger lift, like smoke dispersing into the wind. The next day, the master took the student to the edge of the ocean, where waves met the shore in a rhythmic, endless dance. He filled a small cup with seawater and held it up. "If I put a spoonful of salt into this cup, will it taste salty?" The student nodded. "Yes, master. The salt will overwhelm the water." The master then took a handful of salt and threw it into the vast ocean. "And now?" The student smiled. "The ocean is so vast, the salt makes no difference." The master returned his smile. "Exactly. A small mind reacts to every disturbance. Like the cup, overwhelmed by even the smallest amount of salt. A vast mind, like the ocean, absorbs everything without losing its peace. Expand your awareness, and no insult, betrayal, or hardship will shake you." The student gazed at the rolling waves, contemplating the lesson. "Master, how do I become like the ocean? My mind feels small, easily disturbed." The master crouched and let water trickle through his fingers. "The ocean does not resist the rivers that flow into it, nor does it fight the storms that pass over it. It embraces them all, yet remains itself. Let go of your need to control every wave, and your mind will expand." As the sun set, the student inhaled the salty air, feeling a shift within. For the first time, he understood. To be truly free, he had to become the ocean. "Words have only the power we grant them," the master said. "If someone calls you a fool, but you do not believe it, their words are no more than an arrow shot into the sky. It falls harmlessly to the ground." The student nodded, but looked troubled. "Master, I try to ignore insults, but sometimes I still feel anger rise inside me. What should I do?" The master smiled. "That is where the second shield comes in, internal stillness. It is not enough to remain silent on the outside. True mastery is to be calm within. Observe your emotions like clouds drifting across the sky. Let them come and go without grasping onto them. The student reflected for a moment. And the third shield? The master pointed toward the vast horizon. Perspective. A small mind experiences every disturbance like an earthquake, but a vast mind like the sky remains unshaken. Expand your awareness, and you will see that most things are unworthy of your distress. The student sighed. But Master, I have lived my whole life reacting to others. How can I change such a deep habit? The master's eyes twinkled with understanding. Through practice, each time you feel anger rising, pause. Ask yourself, will this matter in a day, a month, a year? The more you do this, the easier it becomes to let things go. The student slowly nodded, a newfound clarity washing over him. He realized that mastering his emotions was not about suppressing them, but about choosing which ones to nourish. It was about being like the sky, vast, boundless, and free from the turbulence below. That evening, as he sat in meditation, he revisited the three shields: detachment from words, internal stillness, and perspective. With every breath, he felt lighter, freer. For the first time, he understood. Anger was not an enemy to battle. It was a fire he could simply refuse to feed. The journey to mastering anger is not about suppression, nor about avoiding conflict. It is about learning to let go, to stop grasping at things that do not serve us. When we no longer take ownership of negativity, we free ourselves from its burden. The student had come seeking a way to never be angry again. Instead, he found something greater: the power to choose how he responded. And in that choice, he discovered true freedom. The question is, will you?